Lucas's long night. When Lucas's parents went to visit some old friends, they left him alone at home. Lucas was quite pleased with this situation. He planned to watch movies, play video games, and enjoy snacks all night. However, as midnight approached, Lucas began to hear strange noises inside the house. At first, a soft tapping, followed by a faint whisper from afar. Initially, Lucas dismissed these sounds, attributing them to the wind or the natural creaks of the old house. But as the hours went by, the sounds intensified. Suddenly, he heard the front door slowly open. Maybe my parents came back early, he thought, moving towards the sound. But when he reached the corridor, there was no one. The door was ajar, letting in a cold breeze. Suddenly, a phone rang in the kitchen. But Lucas's home didn't have a landline. The ringing sounded like it came from an old 1980s-style phone. Approaching the sound, Lucas found an old-fashioned telephone on the kitchen counter. When he lifted the receiver, a voice from the other end whispered, "Why didn't you close the door, Lucas?" Frozen with fear, Lucas peeked outside through the window. To his horror, there was a woman in a white dress with long black hair standing in the garden. Her face was obscured by the darkness, but he felt she was staring right at him. Lucas quickly began locking all the doors and windows of the house. But every door and window he locked seemed to be forcibly reopened. Afraid the woman would enter, Lucas locked himself in his bedroom. Inside the room, another surprise awaited him. In the mirror, he saw the woman. Smiling back at him, she whispered, "Why did they leave you, Lucas? Aren't you scared being alone?" Lucas's screams caught the attention of the neighbors who called the police. When the officers arrived, they found no evidence or traces of intrusion. However, Lucas was convinced what he experienced was real. When his parents returned, they found a shaken Lucas. From that day on, he never stayed home alone again. But every night as he lay in bed, he would hear the distant ring of a phone. Noah was returning from school, as usual. He could feel the weight on his shoulders from exam stress and the small disagreements he had with his friends. That night, there was a grand carnival in town. His girlfriend, Jennifer, had invited him, but Noah was truly exhausted and had declined. When he arrived home, he changed into comfortable clothes and settled in the living room. As he snacked in front of the TV, he began to hear strange ticking noises from different parts of the house. At first, he thought it was just the wind, but the rhythm of the ticking didn't resemble anything the wind could produce. He moved to the bedroom and slipped into his bed. As he drifted to sleep, the nightmare he'd been having for the past 3 weeks returned. In his dream, there were always different people, but they all bore the same symbol. Even when awake, he couldn't decipher the meaning of this symbol. Suddenly, he woke up with a jolt. "Oh, that nightmare again," he murmured. Looking out the window, he saw the lights of the carnival shining brightly. Realizing he wouldn't be able to sleep again, Noah called Jennifer and told her he'd changed his mind about the carnival. When they met at the carnival, everything seemed normal. They played various games, enjoyed the merry-go-round, and had fun in the bumper cars. But as time progressed, Noah began to feel uneasy. Jennifer suggested, "Why don't we go to my place and watch a movie?" Noah agreed, and they both headed to Jennifer's house. But upon arrival, the atmosphere was entirely different. The house was cold, and there was an odd energy about it. Jennifer said, "Wait here. I'll go get some drinks." Noah waited, but it seemed to be taking her longer than expected. Worried, he began to search the house for her. Eventually, he reached Jennifer's room. He knocked on the door and heard a voice from inside say, "Come in." Inside, he found Jennifer sprawled on the floor, covered in blood. On the wall was the symbol from his nightmares, drawn in blood. Retreating in fear, Jennifer's lifeless body began to move. Her eyes turned white, and she slowly began to walk towards him, whispering, "Why are you running, Noah?" "You are one of us." Noah fled from the room and abandoned the house. He sprinted towards the bright lights of the carnival. At the entrance, he noticed a banner displaying the same symbol. Suddenly, everyone around him turned to stare, their eyes gleaming white. Inside the carnival, Noah continued to move swiftly. Everyone's eyes, now glowing white, followed his every move. Ahead, at the grandest tent, was a massive stage with a large throne upon it. The town's elderly and respected leader, Mr. Hamilton, sat there. His eyes, too, were an eerie white, and he held a grand staff in his hand. As Noah approached the platform, he realized the wide-eyed crowd was converging with him. Mr. Hamilton raised his staff and began to address the crowd. "On this night, where darkness and light converge, another will join our ranks." Noah realized he was speaking about him. Suddenly, he remembered a small object he carried in his pocket. It was a mysterious stone he had found as a child. Holding the stone aloft, hoping it would do something, it began to emit a radiant light. The light illuminated the entire carnival. One by one, the wide-eyed individuals began to revert to their normal selves. Mr. Hamilton dropped his staff and collapsed. Jennifer rushed towards Noah and embraced him tightly. Outside the carnival, the townsfolk gathered. None of them remembered the ordeal. Noah realized the mysterious power of the stone he had found as a child. Holding hands, Noah and Jennifer walked away from the town, watching the sunrise. Both carried the scars of the terrifying night as they continued their lives. The House of Nightmares. Once upon a time, on the outskirts of town, there was an old abandoned house. This house was known as the House of Nightmares. Echoes of a horrific event that took place 50 years ago still resonated within its walls. In 1953, a young couple named Emma and David moved into this house. They had recently married, and this was their first home. However, just a few days after moving in, they began to hear strange sounds at night. These sounds seemed to come from within the walls, the basement, and the attic. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of the rooms. One night, Emma looked out the window and saw a figure in black, pacing around the house. The face of the figure was shrouded in darkness. Emma tried to show David, but he did not believe her. A few days later, David decided to venture into the basement to see what was happening. There, he found an old chest. Inside were black and white photos showing the figure in black. Among the photos, there was a letter tied with a red ribbon which read, "Let him go, or he will take you." When David showed this letter to Emma, she deduced that the spirit haunting them was the old owner of the house. This spirit wanted to scare away everyone living in the house. At night, Emma and David were awakened by terrifying noises coming from all over the house. The spirit did not even leave them in peace in their dreams. One night, Emma dreamt she was being chased around the house by the former owner. They decided to escape this horror and called upon a wise person for help. The wise person attempted a ritual to drive the spirit away, but during the ritual, the figure in black appeared and banished the wise person from the house. The townspeople started believing that the house was cursed. Nobody dared approach it. Emma and David decided to spend one more night in this terrifying house. However, that night, the figure in black attacked them and drove them out of the house. Emma and David left town and moved somewhere else. Yet, the House of Nightmares still stands there, waiting with its terrifying secrets